everyone, and welcome back to The Shivering Mouse. Today we're going to talk about Disney's 37th animated feature made in 1999. We're talking about Disney's Tarzan. Tarzan opens very dramatically with a shipwreck on the coastline near the Congo, where Tarzan's mother and father attempt their very best to make a safe shelter for them during the survival situation. Unfortunately, Tarzan's mother and father are killed by a leopard named Sabor. Farther into the Congo, a baby gorilla is also killed by this very same leopard, and his mother, Kala, is left devastated. So, as we proceed, Kala hears the infant Tarzan crying far away. She comes upon the scene of his parents' murder and decides that at that moment that she's going to adopt the baby because he's lost his mother, she's lost her baby. To her, they seem like a good fit, almost as if they're meant for each other. So she takes Tarzan in, much to the dismay of the rest of her gorilla family, especially her husband, Kerchak. But she takes him in nonetheless. We follow Tarzan for a few years, starting when he's 5 years old, showing him growing to be strong and befriend all of the local animals. This is especially difficult for Tarzan because he's, in fact, a human living in a wild jungle world, so he doesn't have the claws and paws necessary to be able to survive adequately. Goodness knows how he survived the mosquitoes alone, okay? Mosquitoes are brutal, and I'm sure they're just as bad in the Congo as they are up here in the shivering north. Anyway, it does show him kind of growing up through various stages, adapting to the environment, learning to embrace his unique set of skills and strengths that are different from those of gorillas. Throughout this, he becomes more comfortable with himself. He loses a lot of that deep insecurity that he suffered with as a child, not knowing where he belongs in the picture of things going on in the jungle. He knows he's fundamentally different, he just doesn't know how, and he learns, like Mowgli, how to use that for his advantage, and becomes much more confident and comfortable with himself. Once he's reached adulthood, there's a large fight within the gorilla campaign, and he ends up, or within the gorilla camp, rather, and he ends up killing the leopard Sabor, who killed his parents and Kala's baby, and lays him at the feet of Kerchak in a symbolic gesture of, yes, I defeated this great enemy that you were unable to defeat, but that doesn't mean I'm after your position within the camp. You're still the leader, and I just want to be your son. This kind of mends the bridge between Tarzan and Kerchak. It's hard not to appreciate someone once they've saved your life, so Kerchak does kind of begrudgingly accept Tarzan at this point rather than just tolerate him. It makes him a part of the group. About the same time also, a group of, I don't want to say really explorers because they're not really exploring per se, let's just call them zoologists. Dr. Porter and his daughter Jane Porter, along with their guide/guard, Mr. Clayton. They all kind of embark on this journey, traveling through all of the bamboo and the grass and everything that they can get through into the jungle. They're on a journey to find gorillas, which is, you know, who we've been following throughout the video so far. So it's kind of nice to see them and the gorillas, just because you know they're going to run into each other at some point. With this many gorillas, you know that this group of explorers are going to run into them. Now, if Jane or Dr. Porter were to run into the gorillas, that'd be a great thing, because they just want to study them, draw some pictures, record behaviors, that kind of thing. Because up until this point, this is like early 1900s, so gorilla behavior and social groups were mostly a mystery to at least those of us in Western culture at the time. Dr. Porter has a lot of theories about whether or not they form social groups and family bonds and have more community behaviors, or whether they are isolated, separate beasts. Clayton, on the other hand, is fairly uninterested in the actual behaviors and interactions of the gorillas. He kind of just wants a gorilla or two to put on his wall, or so it seems. We find out later that he wants to capture the gorillas for profit. So he's a little less interested. We don't know this in the beginning, though. Clayton comes off as maybe a little trigger-happy, but overall pretty harmless. So we go through and Jane meets Tarzan. Tarzan gets a little up in her face. I don't think he means to be intrusive. He's just curious because he's never met another creature that looks like him before. So he does get a little up close and personal. It does make Jane a little uncomfortable, but I think she kicks him in the face. So like she's pretty quick to set the boundaries about, okay, you can get this close, but not any closer. So she is pretty firm about putting her foot down there as far as his, you know, explorations of this other species go. They find very quickly that physically they're pretty similar, and while Jane is familiar with other human beings, Tarzan is not. So his kind of worldview is rattled by finally running into creatures that are so like themselves. Tarzan is warned by Kerchak to never reveal where the other gorillas are. His duty as Kerchak's adopted son is to protect his family. However, he can't resist getting closer and closer to other creatures that are similar like him. So he spends time with Jane and Dr. Porter and Clayton, just trying to get to know what humans are like, what human civilizations are like. He learns English. He learns about clothes, though we never really see him adopt any clothes of his own. I don't know why that is. But anyway, he's very interested in human culture, and Jane and Dr. Porter are very intrigued about teaching this wild man how to be human and about civilization. Clayton, on the other hand, is less interested. He's still very driven to try and get Tarzan to tell him where all of the gorillas are. Tarzan keeps his promise to Kerchak and rejects this, basically spending more of his time studying English and culture. So, you know, eventually, as all journeys do, the Porter's journey comes to an end and they have to return to England. Traveling across seas to a totally different continent was very dangerous in this time, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the zoologists. And so to them, they're very distressed that they haven't gotten to see a gorilla during their stay and that they do have to go home sort of empty-handed. It doesn't go into it in the movie, but you can imagine there were probably sponsors and colleges and things like that that provided for their trip and allowed them to be able to go. And so it's very distressing for them to not be able to come back with any information about gorillas whatsoever. Tarzan intends to ask Jane to stay with him, and she really feels that she can't. And so Clayton, seeing his attachment to the girl, uses this as a means to kind of trick Tarzan into believing that if he shows Jane the gorillas, Jane will stay. This, of course, is incorrect. Jane needs to return to England to give the results of her studies, but Tarzan takes the bait. He's not used to somebody being deceitful to him the way Clayton is, and so he shows everyone where the gorillas are, and Clayton makes a mental note of where the camp is. Once they are exploring and getting to know the gorillas, Kerchak returns from wherever he was at the time. Tarzan had arranged for him to be distracted, and is enraged that Tarzan has given away their location. He's furious. Tarzan has to hold him back from attacking the other humans as the humans make their escape. And during this interaction, Tarzan is kind of semi-officially banned from the gorilla family. Kala, Tarzan's adopted mother, takes him up to the site of his biological parents' murder to give him a better idea of his history and where he comes from. Why are there these other creatures that look like him? She says she should have done it long ago, and frankly, I agree. But it's good that she does go ahead and do it in the first place. He gets some idea of what his parents looked like and the kind of work they put in to try and protect him during his early years. She then tells him that she's happy whatever he chooses, whether he chooses to stay or go. He comes out dressed in his father's clothes, which kind of signifies that he's decided to return to England with Jane. He boards the ship with Jane and Dr. Porter, and they prepare to go back to England. However, shortly after coming on board, he notices that there's been a mutiny. Jane, Dr. Porter, and the ship's crew of the officers in the ship have all been trapped underneath below decks in the metal belly of the ship, whereas the regular seamen have gone ahead and taken over the ship, and they're preparing a bunch of cages to take across with them to the jungle in order to trap all of the gorillas. Clayton, it turns out, was the leader of this mutiny, of course, and so he goes ahead and takes those guys across to the Congo while Tarzan's animal friends, namely his cousin Turk and Tantor the elephant, breach the ship and rescue him and the porters and the officers in the crew. So they go ahead and run back and rescue Tarzan's family from Clayton and the other poachers, basically. They're poachers. They don't intend to kill any of the gorillas except for Kerchak, but they do plan to illegally obtain them, and therefore they're poachers. You find out later they're doing this because Clayton has been promised 300 pounds a head for each gorilla. Back in 1900, that was a whole lot of money, and so he's out there to capture these gorillas. He and Tarzan have a fight, and Kerchak is actually killed in the scuffle. As Tarzan tries to kind of at least stop Clayton and bring him to his senses, Clayton is swinging wildly at the vines in the trees as they climb the trees to try and battle it out. He doesn't notice that one of the vines has become wrapped around his neck, and as he slices the vine, which he's using for balance, and he and Tarzan kind of fall towards the forest floor, he's actually hanged by the vine that had wrapped around his neck. His behavior while he's fighting Tarzan in the vines is meant to be reminiscent of Sabor the leopard, in that he's just wildly swinging about with his machete, lashing it back and forth, not thinking about what he's doing, just attacking out of primal instinct and hatred, and that ends up being his downfall as much as it was for the leopard. This is called often one of the darkest Disney deaths, because while you don't see Clayton hang himself, you do see the vine around his neck before he cuts the vine, and you then see a silhouette of him as the lightning flashes, a silhouette of him kind of gently swinging back and forth as he's hung from the vine against the backdrop of the forest. And so it is kind of a darker death for Disney, but it's a little creepy. If you've got some little bitty kids who may be pretty uncomfortable with that, this might be a spot to kind of distract them. The rest of the movie is fairly lighthearted. Well, Jane and Dr. Porter are getting ready to go back to England now that the gorillas are free and all the wrongs have been righted. Dr. Porter reminds Jane that maybe her spot is here, that she loves Tarzan and maybe she should stay with him. She, of course, does jump off the little boat and go back to Tarzan, only for Dr. Porter to decide that, you know what, he's happier here too. He tells the captain to tell the people in England that they never found them, and he jumps in the water and joins his daughter and soon-to-be son-in-law to just live in the jungle from then on. It closes with a song, and all is right with the Disney World. There have been a lot of fan theories about this movie, like a lot, and probably the most famous one is the Frozen connection. A lot of people theorize that when Anna and Elsa's parents' ship goes down in Frozen, that it actually washes up on shore in the Congo, and that they are Tarzan's parents as well. This would make Tarzan the rightful ruler of Arendelle, based on the fact that even though Elsa and Anna would both be older, he would be the sole male heir. So there's a lot of theories there. There's also a theory about Jane, and that she usually wears her big poofy yellow gown, and then we see her tea set looks exactly like the tea set from Beauty and the Beast. A lot of people theorize that she is a descendant of Belle. Again, I can neither confirm nor deny. I'm just saying, personally, as a huge Disney fan, I would love to think both of these are true. I think the Frozen theory is a little more of a stretch, just because Frozen takes place up in Norway, which is pretty far from the Congo, and since they are supposed to be sailing to Rapunzel and Flynn's wedding at the time, I just don't see them somehow ending up in the Congo so far away from Europe at the time. That'd have to be one crazy storm for them to end up over in Africa. A lot of people see Clayton and Tarzan as a metaphor for two different kinds of masculinity as well. That Tarzan is the protector, that they're both very extreme examples of masculinity. They're both very physical, very violent, very, capable of a kill. You do see both of them perform a kill throughout the course of the movie. They're both very capable with weapons, and yet Tarzan is the protector and provider, whereas Clayton, due to his own insecurities and perhaps poor upbringing, has taken masculinity to its negative side. And so we look at them both as views of different extremes of the qualities of masculinity too, which in today's society is a pretty pertinent topic that, we tend to call all masculinity toxic, whereas masculinity in the right context is one of the most admirable traits that a person can have. You just have to understand that, like any quality, there is a positive and negative side of it, whether it's the qualities of masculinity or the qualities of taking care of your appearance, the qualities of watching what you eat. There is, of course, a positive and a negative extreme on both angles, and so I've kind of liked that view of it, but that is, of course, a fan view. If you want to know more about the different fan theories revolving around Tarzan, Frozen, and Beauty and the Beast, I recommend checking out the Watso video channel. Isaac has some great views on how these three franchises might be connected. Also, the Super Carlin brothers have a lot of excellent videos on similar fan theories to this as well. I think they take kind of the same view as I am, where while it's possible and it's kind of a neat fan idea, I think the Beauty and the Beast idea is much more likely than the Frozen fan theory. So those are my thoughts on Tarzan and why it's one of the better Disney movies, and kind of summarizing the plot. If you want to know more, don't hesitate to check out the channels I mentioned, and you have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on Thursday for our Villain Spotlight.